Welcome to the Leeds View podcast. We do these twice a week, as well as daily Leeds United news and a transfer wrap up at the weekend. We're part of the Sports Social Podcasting Network and we're available across YouTube and all of your podcasting audio apps. If you want to support the channel, the best way to do so is by clicking a like and a subscribe on YouTube or giving us a follow and channel rating on the audio platforms. Tonight, we've got something a little bit different. We're going to dive into the sexy world of football finance because it's all changed. And as much as we think we understand this, guarantee you, we absolutely don't. So I'm delighted to be joined by Steve Carlyle, who's a financial educator, formerly also business owner, business finance expert, teacher, as well as other strings to his bow as well, but a man who very much knows the numbers and the detail behind this. And Steve has been guiding my hand over the last couple of months on SCR since it was first muted as coming in and then coming into force on the 1st of July, and something we'll have to keep a very close eye on for the next 12 months. But what does it actually mean? We're going to get into that tonight in a lot of detail. We're going to go through the model, the basics of it, where Leeds stand right now, some scenarios to make it a bit clearer and a bit easier to understand, how sales impacted, how purchasing a player by the stakes with this, and then the bigger picture, what happens if you make a mistake and go over your limit, or does it really matter? As well as where does everybody sit on this, including the big boys in the Premier League. Steve, big intro, but massive thanks for joining me tonight. Appreciate you.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me on, Chair. I'm like that little bird that sits on your shoulder, and you can I can see you when you mention anything about SCR or anything financial. You're just getting nervous because you think I do watch podcasts every day. I love your podcast. You forgot to mention that I am also a Leeds United fan, season ticket holder, sit in the West Stand.
Yeah.
Of course, I'm only interested in Leeds. I'm only interested in what's best for Leeds. Whether these rules help us or not, let's get into. But yeah, okay,
we will. The top end question, Steve, on this, just to get us moving into this, because I'll warn everybody, there's a lot of detail in this. There's a lot of minutiae, and we will have some visuals on screen for those watching the video version. If you're watching the audio version, I'll walk you through them as well. But there is a lot to get in. We've tried to make it as simple as we can, but this is not a straightforward topic at all. Steve, we thought PSR was difficult. What's the difference between these two from a top line perspective, and which was easier for everyone to understand?
Well, the first thing is they're both rules based on accounting and accountancy stuff. They're both based on accounting principles. And I would say SCR is a more difficult system to understand for the average fan. You know, I spend my life, or I've spent a lot of my life, teaching people who aren't finance people about finance and trying to get them to understand it. And these rules are even more complex than PSR. PSR was more straightforward, in my opinion. So, yeah, they're both accountancy-based rules. There's more quirks to SCR, though. I keep hearing a lot of commentators saying, oh, this is better for my club, it's worse for my club. I don't think anybody actually knows that. And I hear a lot of experts saying that. And the one thing about me is I'm not being paid for this. I'm just giving you my honest, am I? Oh, no. I'm just giving my honest opinion.
Check me while hang on.
Oh, no, I'm not. I'm just giving my honest opinion. And I personally don't know whether this is better or worse for Leeds United. And a lot of the things I'll tell you today about the figures relating to Leeds United are all unknowns, because, as you may know, you don't find out the actual figures for Leeds United until 9 months after the year end. So we won't find out about the last season ending 30th of June till next March. So we won't know the real figures, and we never know the detail unless we work for the Leeds United in the finance team. We never know the detail and how everything breaks down. Anyway.
So these are a best guesstimate based on the existing numbers that are available to everybody, plus what's out there in the public sphere right now. And again, Steve's done some detail on his own YouTube channel on this as well. The links for that are down below. There's two videos. He split it up into two kind of consequences in the second one, detail in the first one. So you'll be able to check that out. And I'll give you another nudge towards the end of the video to remind you. Go and check them out if you want to get full, uninterrupted by an Irish lad on a microphone version of Steve talking about SCR, so you can get stuck into that. Steve, on that topic of it's better for my club, it's worse for your club. I've heard lots of different people talk about this. We had a brief chat about it before we went and hit record. People like Stephen Borst and Kim Maguire have said, well, this is probably better for Brighton and the Bournemouth because they buy cheap and they sell high. It's probably not great for an Aston Villa and a Chelsea because they're in Europe and they've got high wages and they've got lots of amortization payments. Probably doesn't suit them, but again, not necessarily the case.
No, I don't know whether it'll be good, bad or indifferent for Leeds United compared to PSR. any club that buys cheap and sells expensive, it'll do well under any system. Where I can say that it will be very, very difficult is for any clubs like Brentford who've gone into Europe. Yeah. They're going to really, really struggle. I'm going to ignore what happens to clubs in Europe for the most part on this. But if you're going to Europe, the amount you're allowed to spend goes down from 85% to 70%. So a small club that's made the step up to Europe, you won't want to do it. We won't want to do it. I mean, you know, a dream of us getting into Europe would be fantastic, but we don't really want to do it because it'll kill us. It'll absolutely kill us. So just be very careful how high your ambitions are, because the amount you're allowed to spend really plummets massively.
Yeah, it's got to be. I think Parag Marat said about this, PSR would have suited us for the next 3 years, and then SCR kind of benefits us a bit once the stadium is completed and done, and we've got the revenue coming in from that. But until then, you know, maybe pump the brakes a little bit and have sustainable growth and not sprint before you can walk, which I think Sunderland might have done in this situation this year.
Yeah. And
interesting piece on
he knows, he's got the figures. Parag's got the figures, so you've got to listen to him. He can see the actual figures or the actual budget figures. We can't. So, you know, you've got to listen to the man. You know, he's doing his best for the club, I would imagine.
Well, yeah, absolutely. If you look at look at the numbers each year since they've taken over the club. The other part of this as well is, again, it's been said by people, owners doing it on the cheap, or why don't the owners just pump money into the club? Owners can't actually impact this in any way.
No. Putting money into the club, putting cash into the club does not affect your PSR ratio. The only way you could do that is by the sort of model that Man City have had in previous years and other clubs, where they've got other businesses that they own to advertise with their football club, and that's brought the revenue up, and that would then increase the amount of revenue you have, and therefore increase the amount you could spend on your squad costs. But actually just putting cash in and injecting cash, whether it's a loan, whether it's buying shares, it won't make any difference to the SCR ratio, the squad cost ratio. But what you've got is, with Leeds United, what you've got is, and with every club, is you've got to stick within this ratio, which we'll talk about in a second. But if you stick within the ratio and you calculate your ratio, and the ratio tells you, oh, you've got 500 million to spend, your ratio will let you spend 500 million, you've still got to have that 500 million in the bank. You've still actually got to have the cash in the bank or have the ability to borrow money to actually spend that 500 million. The SCR ratio is limiting the amount that you're allowed to spend, but you might not have that cash in the bank. So that there's those two things going on at the same time. So putting money into the club is important. I've got most of the information for this broadcast from a leaked paper from the 49ers, which has been quite well leaked, and you featured it on the podcast before.
Yeah, the Athletic leak that, yeah.
The Athletic leak, yeah. And that's because the 49ers went to potential investors, and they were trying to raise money because they need to get cash into Leeds United so that they can actually pay for these players. Yeah. So that is important, getting the cash in. But then you're then restricted, even if you've got half a billion, in the bank, you're then still restricted by the SCR rules. So it works both ways. If the SCR says you can spend X amount of money, you've still got to have the X amount of money to be able to spend it. If you've got X amount of money, 500 million, you've still got to fit within the SCR rules. So those two things are going on. What we've got to assume at Leeds United is, whatever our SCR ratio tells us we can spend, that Parag Marat and the 49ers board have made sure we've got enough cash in the bank to do it. And I'm pretty confident that we have. So when we get into the details of SCR, what that tells us we're allowed to spend, take that as read, take that there aren't any further restrictions, take that we've got the cash, I would say. Again,
yeah, I suppose to kind of make the how owners can put money into the club thing a bit clearer as well. Manchester City obviously won a case against the Premier League last year, the year before, around third-party sponsorship models, where basically they were essentially sponsoring themselves in a roundabout way and inflating their sponsorship costs in order to pump that money into the club.
Yeah.
Premier League says you can't do that. They had a legal case with them. Manchester City won, which kind of opens the doors for everybody else to do something similar to that.
Yeah.
Leeds' situation is we have a minority owner in Red Bull who also happened to be the shirt sponsor and the training gear sponsor. So should Red Bull decide they want to pump some money into Leeds to try that they can spend, that would be the conduit that they would use to pump that money in. Yeah.
Through that, as long as it's football related revenue. Yeah. There is a limit in the SCR ratio that it's got to be football related revenue.
Yeah.
So not like what Chelsea did, selling their
hotels and women's team.
Certainly not selling property, and including revenues from sales of property that they own that's not football, that's like hotels or whatever. Yeah. As long as it's football related revenue, then it can be included in the ratio. We're getting into the minutiae now, though, Jer. Before we got into
let's get into a property then.
Let's get into sorry, it's your podcast, mate. I mean, I'm aware of.
That's good. It's important. I think it's. I mean, as much detail as you can get because it does obviously matter. We'll start off with this. We've got a couple of visuals to walk through. Again, if you're listening on the audio, we'll walk you through this. So the first one we're looking at here is so essentially what the new model actually is. There is a hard cap on squad spending. Squad costs for Leeds, as we're not in Europe, 85% of all football related revenue. That includes first team professionals, manager, director of football only, player costs, and agent fees. I had a second part to that. It's gone out of my head. That's the basics. And then you've got an assessment period, which runs from the 1st of July to the 30th of June. So it's a 1-year period rather than a 3-year period, which was the basis before. So that's the basics of this, Steve.
Yeah, absolutely. A couple of things on that, just to make it clear. Your squad costs are your player costs. Now, which players? Basically, your full professional squad. So that's your 25-man squad. Yeah, your official 25-man squad. But you can also have under 21 players in there as well. And there is some guidance coming out. I don't want to get into this too much, but there is going to be some EPL guidance on who should and shouldn't be included. People like, your academy players, if you're on a scholarship scheme, normally you wouldn't be included, but there might be exceptions if those players were coming up and been training with the first team squad. They are going to issue some clarification, but it's going to make peanuts difference to the actual big numbers, when we're talking about hundreds of millions of pounds. Yeah. So it's the player costs plus Daniel Farke, just Daniel Farke, no other member of the management team. Yeah. Just Daniel Farke. Yeah. No physios or anything else. Just DF. Then the cost of new players. Now that's the thing that always gets fans. It's not the full cost, as we'll see. It's what we call the amortized cost. We'll get back to that. And then you've got your agent's fees. So that's what your squad costs are. We don't include the non-professionals, the male non-professionals, the ones who are on scholarships. Normally we wouldn't include them. And we don't include the ladies teams either. Now that's important because from the football revenue point of view, we can include all football revenue, and that includes revenue that we get from the ladies teams and revenue that we get from the under 21s and the under 18s and any other teams that play for Leeds. So that's a bit of a benefit for everybody. Your squad costs is only limited to your professionals, but your revenue is revenue from any football source, including the ladies team and the youth teams. Yeah. Okay.
And also then any kind of development work isn't included in this as well. So for example, the work on the West Stand and the Cup over the next couple of years, Leeds have raised that funds independently and they can use that as much as they want and doesn't impact on this at all.
Absolutely not. These are people costs. Yeah, the HR type costs. Yeah, and it's not all the people, as we said, it's the professional playing team, Daniel Farke. What we spend on players, but just hold that in your mind because we've got this funny little thing that we call player amortization to deal with, and then the agents' fees as well, and that's what's in your squad costs. And those squad costs have got to be a maximum of 85% of your football revenue. So multiply your football revenue by 85%. That'll give you your maximum squad cost for the year. Okay. Do you want to talk through this first and me come in? Or we'll just give it again for those who are listening. So then you've got your Leeds spending ceiling for the 26-27 season. The predicted revenue, and as Steve said already, we don't know Leeds' exact finances for the year that's just finished. We won't get them until March. So it's a predicted revenue for Leeds of about 265 million. So the range on that is between 260 and 270 million. The SCR limit is 85% of the football revenue, which comes out roughly as a max squad spend of 225.25 million for the 26-27 season. And these are the numbers that were included in that leaked 49ers memo that the Athletic put out. Yeah, absolutely. Couple of points on that. The squad cost ratio figures are based on your predictions. That's Leeds United's predictions from the 1st of July this year, 2026, to the 30th of June next year, 2027. So Leeds have to do a prediction, and they have to send it to the EPL, to the English Premier League. So they're predicting their revenue. Now we think, me and Chair, and this comes from the 49ers document, we think that that's going to be somewhere around 265 million. Yeah, and even the actual prediction is only a prediction. So Leeds will make a prediction of about 265 million. Therefore, Leeds will predict that they can spend up to 225.25 million on squad costs. You know, player wages, Daniel Farke, new player acquisitions and agents fees. 200, but they're never going to spend that much, are they? You think about it. The 265 million is only a budget for this coming year. It's only a budget. Things might go wrong. That budget will include where we think we're going to finish in the league. So we might have budgeted to finish 12th. What happens if we have a terrible start to the season? You know, so the 265 million is only an estimate. So therefore the 225.25 is only an estimate. So we're never going to go as high as that. Yeah.
Plus and or minus. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're going to go a long way below that. Just bear that in mind. Okay. So this is where
this is the headroom then. Yeah.
This is where we are at the moment. So we believe, again, this is what we believe. We believe, based on what the 49ers put out there, that the squad costs at the end of last year are around about 165 million. Around about that. Yeah. I think I broke it down to 112 million for actual player costs and
wages.
15,
yeah, 112 wages, 53 million on amortization and agent costs.
Yeah. So about 165. So when you look at it, you go, last year is the beginning of the 30th of June. Last year is the 1st of July this year. How things stood was that we had 165 million that we were spending on wages. We can spend up to 225.25. Oh, that gives us 60.25 million headroom, 60.25 million that we can increase things. And that's before we sell players. That's before we sell any players, you know. So what you think, wow, that looks absolutely fantastic. But that isn't what Leeds United are planning to do. We believe that Leeds United are actually budgeting to take that 165 million that we think it ended at last year up to 195. So we believe that there's going to be an extra 30 million spent on squad costs. Now you might be sitting there,
because people will think, oh, so we've got 160 million of a transfer fee, a transfer budget. Not the case.
No. We believe that Leeds United are going to take the squad costs total spending, that includes all the wages that we've already got to pay and everything. We believe they're going to take 165 million to 195 million, because that's, again, coming out of what's been leaked from the 49ers. So we believe that they're going to increase spending on squad costs by 30 million. Now, I think if you're sitting there as a fan listening to that, you're going to be quite worried, because you're going to be thinking, what, we can only spend 30 million on players, on new players. So what I want to show you is how the system works, and we're going to do that on our next little bit that's going to pop up.
Yeah.
I want to show you how it works with an actual acquisition we've made, where even though we're still guessing at some of the figures, and we're also guessing at how to pronounce his name, I'll let Jair do it.
Thanks for that, Steve.
He's been practicing, because I've heard him on the podcast practicing. Come on.
I'm going to have nightmares with this guy, Tarek Muharamovic, who has come in. So this is a breakdown. And again, this is a best guesstimate based on how they tend to normally work, of how the actual transfer of Tarek Muharamovic to Leeds United has worked versus the current squad costs.
Yeah. Okay. So I think you said his name beautifully. I'll just call him Tarek. So because I like that friendly approach. I don't like the way the fans use everyone's surname. So Tarek, we started our squad costs. We reckon before we bought him, we're about 165 million. We think his wages are going to be around 3.5 million. So that's about 70 grand a week. Yeah, which wouldn't be unreasonable. We have no idea what his agent's fees are, but you know, we're going to go for 1 million. Okay. Just figure plucked randomly out of the air. But this is the killer bit. This is the bit that fans hate. We think we paid 34 million for him, didn't we? Pounds.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what we do in the rules, and this is what accountants do. This is a normal accountancy rule. When you sign a player for 5 years, and we believe we've signed him for the squad. The club have actually announced that it's a 5-year deal, haven't they? That's right. So that is the one piece of information we know for definite. The 5-year deal, of all this conjecture, right? So we know we've signed him for 5 years. So what an accountant would do is they would say, right, well, we've bought a contract. We haven't bought a physical person. We've bought a person's legal contract. We've bought a contract for 34 million, and that contract is going to benefit us for 5 years. So what we're going to do is we're going to spread the cost of that contract over the next 5 years, and we take a fifth of it every year, and we call it amortization. And amortization is just another fancy word for another word that people will have heard before, which is depreciation. Yeah, so we feel that his contract was worth 34 million at the beginning. When he's finished, it'll be worth 0 because we won't be able to, we won't have any hold over him. So we spread that 34 million over those 5 years, and we do it evenly. So a fifth of 34 million is 6.8 million. So that is how we deal with a headline transfer fee of 34 million. It's an accounting rule. It's well known. It's well understood amongst accountants. I know it's a bit of an odd thing if you're not an accountant, but that's how it works. So look at that. That as we reckon then of that 30 million headroom, we said, because we believe what Leeds are going to go from 165 to 195, 30 million. We've used up over a third of that on Tariq. It's probably. So if you think about it, we could probably afford another 2 signings like that.
Right.
If we don't make any sales. So we could have 3 biggies. So are we still talking about Trafford? I missed the podcast today, actually.
Yeah, we're still very much talking about Trafford being the number 1 target. Yeah. And then possibly a couple of freebies and maybe even a Shea Charles.
What are we talking about with the fee for Trafford?
Trafford, anything between 30 and 40 million, and Shea Charles, anything around 25-ish million. So
those would be our 3 big signings, and they would eat up all of that 90 million, assuming the wages are similar. Yeah. It would more or less take most of that away. We could probably do a Brandt as well. Is he still in the frame?
Yeah, he's still there. Free transfer as well. You could probably look at a couple of backups as well.
Yeah, and if his wages were 5 million a year, something like that, we could probably get all those over the line without selling anybody and still stick within that 30. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's what we're looking at. So that's how it works. Yeah. Okay.
The next thing then is, can Leeds really spend big on fees, which you've kind of already answered.
Well, yeah, we sort of gone over this, but we also know from the Leeds. I'm always checking myself and thinking, well, the little that I actually know, because I'm not part of Leeds United's finance team, a little bit that I actually know, the bits of information that come onto the internet, I'm just checking it, do a little sense check. We have been told, this figure's been quite widely touted, hasn't it, that the 49ers have said they're going to spend 89 million on transfers. Have you seen that figure before, Joe?
Yes, a similar number to last year. They said anything between 90 and 100 million-ish thereabouts, depending on sales as well.
Yeah. So if I do a little bit of mental maths, 89 million, about 90 million. Yeah. If we spend that on players, and those players are all signed in 5-year contracts, a fifth of 90 million is 18 million. 18 million of amortization. 18 million, and then we're aiming to move squad costs up by 30 million. So 30 less 18 is 12 million. So, 18 million on amortization, 12 million on wages. It works. So I think the figures I've given you
add up.
Yeah, they add up. Everything adds up both ways. It adds up based on what we've seen with Tariq, and it adds up based on what I've heard that 49ers have said they're going to spend. This would be before any player sales, though. I've got to emphasize. It's not that we're probably going to sign. We'll go home now. Then we're going to sign. We're going to we'll switch off Jazz podcast. No, don't do that.
Yeah.
There's lots more excitement, twists and turns. So we've got Tariq. We're looking at Trafford. We're looking at Shea Charles. There are 3 big money signings. And then we might be able to get Brandt's wages in there, and that'll fill that 30 million gap that we.
And that will obviously all depend on, again, how Leeds are structuring these deals with the clubs as they bring the players in, and then the sales that will happen as well. Again, how much Leeds are bringing in and when it comes in as well. So as a fan, you always hear, oh, well, the transfer budget's around 100 million. Oh, we spent 34 million on this player. That's a third of that budget. Or as we said during the week. Oh, we sold Pascal Stroke for 18 million. We bought Maharamovic for 34 million. What's the net spend on that? And that's not how it works at all.
Okay, no. So first of all, we sold Pascal. Sadly, I love Pascal. Last year. So he went in last year's account, so he's irrelevant, apart from the fact we will have saved on his wages, right? Any profits on sale, they went last year. The second thing is, do you know what, mate? It would be absolutely lovely if that's the way they did it, and it was 50 million out, 50 million in. It doesn't work like that. It was better under PSR to understand the system. We've seen how it works with the player coming in. We'll have a look at how it's going to look with the player. Well, we'll just come back a sec first, actually, because I just did want to mention on the Maharamovic, the other point you raised, Jet. So when you've got a player coming in, another thing that fans get very interested in is how the deal is structured. So for Tariq, we said we paid 34 million. Now, fans get very focused on, oh, well, did we pay it in installments? Did we pay half now, half later, etc.? How was the deal?
Yeah.
That would, on the example I showed you, if we pay the full 34 million up front, or we pay 17 million now, 17 million a year, or if we pay 11 and a bit million for the next 3 years, it makes no difference whatsoever to those figures. None whatsoever. And the same is true when we sell a player. When we sell a player, whether we get all the cash up front, whether we get it in installments, it makes no difference to the figures that I'm going to give you on this next example. None whatsoever. And I know fans get very annoyed about that when I've spoken to people and they get very annoyed with me. I don't know why, because I'm just telling them the truth. That, people do get annoyed. They get annoyed because they're passionate. We're all passionate. I'm a passionate fan as well. But
express an opinion and wait is what I always say. Best way to start an argument.
Yeah. Now, I'm really sorry that I've got this example up on the screen, but I couldn't think of it. Can you think of anyone else that we're going to get any money from selling? Max Vogel.
Max Vogler's has literally gone today on a contract termination. So he's gone for nothing, but his wages are off the books. And again, before someone jumps into the comments, because I know you're typing right now, we are not saying Willie Gnonto is definitely leaving the club or will be sold. This is a hypothetical example of, let's just say Willie Gnonto was to be a player Leeds sold, and they sold him for ballpark around 16 million quid. This is how a sale would work, and you can apply this logic to any players Leeds actually do sell.
Again, Jay, I'd emphasise that I love Willie Gnonto. I love him. I think there's so much more to give, and obviously things haven't gone well for him last year, and he had his little fallout with the club as well a couple of years ago. But I still think he's a fantastic player, great personality. I don't want him to be. I just couldn't think of anyone else that we're going to get any decent cash for. So anyway, this is why I put him together as an example. So I'm going to assume that he's going to be sold for £16 million to Freiburg. They're all going to be typing, "No way, he's worth far more than that. That wouldn't even buy his right boot." But it's just an example.
Argument's sake.
Yes, for argument's sake. Oh, here's another bit that's going to blow your mind. His book value is just under £1 million. How do I know that? Well, there's quite a bit we do know about Willie Gnonto. We know we bought him for about 4 million. Yeah. And he's got 1 year of his contract left. So following that amortization thing, we would have spread his cost, £4 million, over 5 years, which would be 800,000 a year. So we've had 4 lots of 800,000, which is 3.2 million.
Does he not have more than a year left? Did he not sign a new deal in the Championship?
He did sign.
It was 3 years.
He did sign a new deal, but we'd already amortized most of his old deals. So, you're absolutely right. Yeah, even I know that as a non-football expert. Yeah, I did look that up. He did sign a new deal, but we were still amortizing. We believe we were still amortizing his original fee over 5 years. So in our books, in our balance sheet, I know that's another technical word, but in our balance sheet, we'll have him down as having a value of £800,000 because we've amortized the other. It's a bit like having it's a bit like having a car. You buy a car, it depreciates in value, and it's worth so much at the end when you sell it on, right?
Your finance on your car, you take your finance over a 5-year period. By the time you paid off your finance, your car is not worth what you paid for it.
Yeah, exactly. So slightly different with footballers, but anyway, in our books, just take it as read. In our books, he's got a value of just under £1 million. So when we sell him, what we do is we compare the sale price, and it doesn't matter whether we get in installments or one-off hit. We take the total sale price less what is in our books at. Is in our books at 800,000, 0.8 million. So our profit on sale is 15.2 million in my example. And what you as a fan and what I as an accountant would have assumed before the SCR rules came out is that 15 million we'd be able to take all of it in the year we sell him.
Yeah.
So in the financial year from 26 to 27. And unfortunately, when the EPL have created their squad cost ratio rules, they've made it far too complex. They've come up with this strange, bizarre rule where what we've got to do with that 15 million profit is, first of all, we've got to add it to our revenue figure. And secondly, we can only add it over a 3-year period. So basically, we split that 15.2 million in 3. I know it's blowing your minds here. Just stick with it. We're following it up on the next slide, aren't we? So 15.2 million is spread over 3 years. So about 5 million a year. And we add it to revenue. And then do you want to click the next slide on? So, yeah. So what we do is our revenue will go up from 265 million.
Yeah.
We'll add the third of 15. So that's another 5 million. Yeah. So our revenue will go up to 270 million. And then because our squad costs can be 85% of our revenue, our squad costs will be recalculated, as you can see there. We'll recalculate our squad cost to 85% of 270 million. So our squad cost allowance will go up to 229.5. So we'll basically add in another 4 million to our squad cost allowance. So that 30 million that we said the 49ers plan to spend will go up to 34 million roughly. So we'll have another 4 million, which might pay for Brandt's wages, more or less. Yeah. Okay. So there you go. That's how it goes.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. One other thing, which is
the wages, non-toes wages. Actually,
I forgot to mention that non-toes wages we're assuming are about 2 million quid. So the actual squad cost will go down from 170. So actually, we'll add 4 million to our squad cost cap. And we'll reduce the actual squad cost by 2 million. So we'll have a 6 million player with. So that would pay for Brandt. Yeah, but it's a really complicated system.
Yeah, because they're working off a 1-year accounting period. Yeah. But they're spreading your sale value over 3, which
no accountant would ever do that. In the actual financial accounts, we won't do that. We'll take the full profit in the year that we sell him. But for squad cost purposes, you spread the profit over 3 years. So we'll get 5 million boost to revenue in the squad cost ratio next year, and we'll get 5 million boost the year after. But it would have been nice to have the whole lot straight away.
But again, for there's a lot of numbers, and it's not the most straightforward thing to follow along with. And some people will be saying, well, we sell for 16 million quid, we're only getting 5. Well, that's rubbish. Then we can't buy players. But at the same time, when we buy a player for 34 million, we're not paying 34 million. We're only paying a portion of that this year. So it kind of falls in and around the same anyway.
It does, it does. Absolutely, yeah. And I think there is some justification on the EPL site where they say, well, that they actually give that as a justification. They say, well, you know what, if people go and spend a load of money on transfers this year, that amortization will keep going on for the next 4 years, for 5 years in total. So we'll sort of even it up. And if you've got profits on sale, they're really trying to sort of baby, trying to patronize, look after them as if the clubs as if they're children, trying to match.
Some of them behave like children, though.
Well, yeah. So you've just put up on the screen.
This is okay. So under PSR, it was never that straightforward. If you broke the PSR limits, you might get a fine. You might get a 6-point penalty. You might go into a hearing with the Premier League for 4 years and may not get anything at the end of it. The rules might change halfway through the process, which is kind of what's going on with Manchester City right now, where they're possibly now looking at removing points deductions completely and replacing them with a fine system, which personally for me would mean, well, then all the gates are off, because if you've got the money to pay the fine, then you may as well blow your money on whatever transfer you want to. But SCR has its own restrictions in place. There's an 85% cap that we've spoken about. Then there's what happens if you go over 85% up to 115%. And then there's what happens after 115%, which in theory should make it a little bit clearer from a punishment perspective.
It will. It absolutely will. So you're absolutely right. You won't be left wondering, oh, what's going to happen, and you won't be left wondering for years and years and years. So two things: number one, the punishments are preset, and number two, the punishments take place in the year that you've transgressed. To me, this is the worst bit of the rules. It'll lead to all sorts of legal complications because
the year's not over.
Because the year's not over, yeah. So they're going to assess this on the 1st of March. They're going to wait for the January transfer window to be over. And then on the 1st of March, they're going to assess where you are currently. So remember, these are the figures for 26-27 year end, and your year end ends on 30th of June. They're going to assess how well you're doing so far with your budget. So the clubs will all have to submit their progress against their budget. So
kind of like the EFL did.
Yeah, but it's for the first 8 months of the year. And I can tell you as an accountant, a lot of those figures won't have been thoroughly checked. They'll have been checked, but they won't have been subject to audit, for example. So anyway, you send your numbers in on the 1st of March, the EPL checks them. And if you're looking as if you're under 85% up to the 1st of March, and you're pretty comfortably under, then they'll say, right, okay, you look as if you're fully compliant. They will recheck it once the year end's over. If you've gone over, over between 85% and 115%, then you're going to get a fine. But fines, fines are fine, and the fine is actually preset. So there's a calculation, there's a formula. I won't go into it, but it depends how much you've gone over. And what your original budget was. So that there's a preset formula for how they calculate the fine. So there's no unknowns there. But then the really difficult position is if they believe on the 1st of March that you're going to go over the 115%. So if you're going to go to 116%, for example, then there's an automatic 6-point deduction. As soon as you get to 116%, 6-point deduction. And it's deducted from the year that you're already in. Yeah. Now, this is bonkers because the year won't have actually finished. You won't actually know where you're going to finish in the league at this stage. Yeah. You won't know what prize money you're going to get.
And that's about 3 million quid per place. So that could move significantly with a couple of places.
Yeah. And you won't know if you're going to win the FA Cup like we could have done, or if you're going to win a trophy. Nothing's been decided at that stage. There's still lots and lots to play for. But if they think you've gone over the 115%, then they will deduct points from your 26-27 season. And I think that is going to cause massive problems, particularly I think it'll cause problems.
Relegate.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're relegating, there's only a couple of points in it, and you've had a points deduction, you've got and you can then at the end of the year look at your books and say, well, actually, we didn't go over it. So
exactly. Yeah. I know. I don't understand how that's going to work. It just seems balmy. I know what they're trying to do. They're trying to say, let's make everything clearer. And I think the way it's set up with how the fines work and with the points deduction, 6 points if you go to 116%, and then thereafter, for every 6.5 million you go over, you get an extra point deducted. Every 6.5 million you go over the 115%. So it's very clear what the sanctions are, but you're still within the financial year that the figures are based on, and that financial year hasn't finished. So I think that's
There's an interesting point on this then regarding transfer movements then as well, because we saw Stroke went on the 30th of June before the 1st of July PSR deadline kicked in, and we banked that money last year, which helped us with PSR last season. We've seen us do it before with Georgie Reuter in the Championship. Again, last minute sell him. That means we're compliant at least, and we've got a bit of headroom. You're not going to be able to sell a player on the 30th of June and bank that money in that financial year because it'll already been calculated before that time period. It'll be done in March. So does this mean that you might see clubs who might be worrying about their position selling players in January, where at the moment it's very much a seller's market in January for clubs, but now they might be forced into moving players?
That's an absolutely brilliant point. I don't know. And actually, by the way, that your financial year ends on the 30th of June. And, if you did a strike sale and Yeah, we just seen if you sold Strike and we got 18 million and all of that was profit. So we'd be allowed to add 6 million to our revenue, and 85% of that, I'm not that good at mental maths, but it'd be nearly 5 million quid would be added to our squad costs, and that could take us back down into the amber zone or back down into the green zone. So you're absolutely right. I don't know how that's going to work, Jay, to be honest.
This is going to be there are clubs like, I mean, you could see the likes of, well, they're not in the Premier League anymore or Championship, but Leicester City's accountants would have a field day with this, and their legal team would have a field day with this. So with Manchester City, like, you know, Chelsea missed out on the European spot by 3 points. They're getting a 6-point deduction. Then they could go after and say, "But we sold the player in March. Fair enough, we didn't join the club until the 1st of July, but the money was banked and we got the sale through." So
I know
it's strange.
It is. It's very strange. I mean,
and they've all voted in favour. Well, 85% of the, well, sorry. Not every club voted in favour of this. Leeds didn't vote in favour of this. 5 clubs didn't vote in favour of this. The rest did.
Yeah, but to be fair, Jay, I'm raising these issues as an accountant, and I have been as well as in training, I've been a finance director of a big business, and I know how unreliable figures can be, particularly budgeted figures, particularly figures partway through the year, and then when you finish the year, everything, oh God, we forgot about that. Oh, you know. I'm not saying clubs are as laissez-faire as that, but it does happen. And I, you know, the guys who go to the EPL meetings and the chairman, they're not accountants. They don't think, they just, a lot of very, very senior business people think what the accountants say is absolutely written in stone and can never change. And, you know, these things do. Accountants aren't fallible. And particularly when you're dealing with something like football, where fortunes can shift so quickly. Yeah. So
I want to ask you a question on this before we get to this, because everyone's asking the same question.
Yes.
How in God's name can Tottenham spend the money they're spending right now, considering they finished 4th bottom over the last 2 seasons, and they are blowing money like their grannies just visited at Christmas with a wad of cash for them? Yeah. They're absolutely spending it out. You've compared how this works for the bigger clubs. And again, before someone comes at me in the comments, I mean, bigger in terms of traditional top 6 finances right now in the Premier League. And Leeds in this, so Leeds, Spurs, Arsenal and Manchester United calculated in this, and it gives you a bit more of a picture, Steve.
Yeah. Tottenham Hotspur, Spurs, are they're the big winners from this because they finished so low. If you're in a European competition, any UEFA competition, then your squad cost ratio limit goes down to 70%. This is what I was talking about with Brentford earlier.
Yeah.
But Tottenham, who have a massive revenue, and you know, you can still include as football related revenue, stadium revenue from things like gigs,
NFL games.
That can be that can be included. They have a massive revenue. They're a fantastic stadium, and they have a predicted revenue. Again, this is just all off asking curated questions to various different AIs and checking it with them. But by the way, don't ask AI anything about squad cost ratio rules, because it often gets Google AI told me Daniel Clark's wages wouldn't be included, and then I had to go back to it and say, just check that again. I think it will be. I like to just always check, double check, triple check, and then he come back and say, "Oh, yes, very sorry, yes, you're right." So it won't tell you that again because it's been corrected.
They hallucinate.
There's a lot of stuff out, you know. Yeah, you got to know what the right questions to ask are when you're using AI. Anyway, these are the figures that AI has told us. I've checked it on three different large language models, and
these are the ones that will also put out their what's the word I'm looking for here? Their finances at the end of the year as well.
Yeah. So we reckon about just under 700 million, and they can spend up to 85% of that on their squad costs. That gives them 586.5 million. Look at that compared to our maximum. You know, it's
225.
Yeah. That's
double and a bit.
It's double and a bit. Yeah, exactly. Arsenal, they've got more revenue, but they can only spend up to 70% because they're in Europe. And Man United, I hate to mention them. But you know, they're just another club, aren't they? And they've got.
We're not ignoring their whatever billion of manageable debt that they've got hanging over the club at the moment.
Yeah, but
that doesn't come into this calculation.
No, but
at all.
It's they've got 70%. They can spend 70%, and they're expected to generate about 750 million. So you can see that the team in the best position is Tottenham, and I would guess the team in the worst position is Brentford, and where one of the also runs. Yeah.
But we're also looking at the likes of Aston Villa, who've just paid another fine to UEFA because for breaching UEFA's SCR rules. And again, I have a brother who's a Villa fan, so I'm close enough to this. They are currently selling off their highest earning wages players to try and balance their books again and get it back down, because the wages cost is a massive part of this.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So it just shows the disparity. Now that disparity was still there under PSR as well, by the way, because but the advantage for those other three clubs is there are a lot of infrastructure costs and other costs that don't come into the squad cost calculation. There are some bits of revenue that they've got that also they have to take out of the revenue figure. Leeds United are much more simple in terms of in their profit and loss account. I think all of their revenue in their accounts is valid football revenue for SCR purposes. But we have a low level of revenue, and even when we build the new stadium and we get all those extra fans in there, and they probably turf me out of my seat and put me into a crap one because mine will be corporate, I presume, and I won't be able to afford it. But anyway, even then, that's still not going to, we might creep up over the years to, I don't know, 300-400 million, but we're going to need some big worldwide exposure to get up anywhere near them, and maybe a couple of titles and whatnot. Yeah. Anyway.
If you do want more detail on this, folks, they're on the screen just there now. SCR Explained Part 1 and Part 2 are over on his YouTube channel. Steve Carlyle is the name of the YouTube channel. The links for that are down below as well. If you just want to go over and check that out, you absolutely can. Steve, I've got one other question that I want to ask you on this. Nothing that comes out of the governing bodies around football is done in the purest of heart. And there are always downsides, or a conspiracy theory, or well, this is the real reason they're doing this. What are the real negatives to this? And what in your, and this is only your opinion, but what in your opinion is the whole point of this?
I just think that the point, I think PSR was a really good system, but it didn't work for our clubs that were in Europe. And I think it's as simple as that, because the European clubs like Villa was being compliant on one side with the PSR rules, then not being able to be compliant with the squad cost ratio rules. And I think I think the main driver of it is that's all I would think. Why UEFA use a squad cost ratio approach and why they started using it in the first place, I don't know. I have no idea. But I don't think there's anything underlying or sinister or evil about it. Honestly, I just don't. I just think it's an overly complicated system, but I think we've done it to follow the Europeans. I'm sorry to say that. I wish I could say something more exciting. I'm an accountant. You're not going to get any sinister, exciting stuff from me.
I remember when PSR came in, my father was still alive at the time. And I remember when it was coming in, my dad saying to me, this is designed to lock the status quo as it is. This will only, and at the time, people weren't saying it. People were saying this is a great idea. It's to protect clubs. It's to stop, bury situations happening again where clubs go out of business. And the reality is it actually hasn't helped any of those clubs at all, because the drip effect has been there. Their academies are getting raided by the top sides because they're using that as well. These are academy players. Then we sell them on for a profit and we make a ton of money. And ultimately, it was designed exactly as my father had said to them, and a lot of other experts said at the time, to lock the status quo. And it did. For a long time, it went, that's your top six. And that's when they became referred to as the top six, the go-to, because it was impossible to move them out of those spots based on how PSR worked at the time. There's been clubs that have broken in there. There's been some good things with PSR that protected us from, like the PIF fund buying into Newcastle and not just buying a league title like Abramovich did when he went into Chelsea. But unfortunately for Leeds, we haven't gotten back into the Premier League during that window where we could have essentially used our owners' money to splurge on players and get us into a top six position. So we have to work our way back up the league now under this new model.
Yeah, look, with the original introduction of financial rules, I think the reason was to stop clubs going bust. And by the way, SCR isn't. There is another element to the SCR rules. There are other rules about how you financed that sit behind the SCR rules, but there's no fines or points deductions for breaching those. I think the new system is designed to look after clubs and stop them going bust. And I think the Newcastle example is a good example that, you know, when Newcastle were purchased, they haven't done a Man City or a Chelsea under Abramovich because they've not been allowed to. They've stuck within the rules, as far as I'm aware. And PSR and this has worked, but unfortunately, you've already got those entrenched clubs that are up the top. And I don't know what you can do about. I honestly don't know what you can do about that, unless you go back to the old system and say, well, if you're lucky enough to have a wealthy owner, then you can do what you want. Yeah. Or if you're lucky enough to have a crazy owner, like we maybe once had. Actually, we've had a few crazy owners, but one of them took us into no names mentioned, no potential legal actions. Don't worry. I never mentioned anyone or any group. But, you know, we did become insolvent at one stage, you know, and you know, these rules would have stopped that. They would have been good for us then if they'd been around. We wouldn't have been allowed to do what we did.
We missed out on all the good stuff with a couple of years. That's all. A couple more years in the Premier League and we would have been, who knows where we would have been now, you know? Slowly do a little Brighton or Brentford would not. The fan base is there and the fan base will grow because it's a club that has got that attraction. So we've seen it. Anyway, Steve, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to give us this detail, folks. I hope that was in some way insightful. If you got anything from that or if it makes the picture a little bit clearer, as we said, it is unfortunately at the top end looking down as clear as mud, but hopefully that's given you at least a little bit more of an understanding of at least how it's put together and where Leeds sit on this. No doubt there'll be a ton of questions on this, and no doubt we'll be talking about this for the next 12 months. At least
I always say, at least you know you don't understand it, and at least if you thought, and then you go, I don't understand this, I'm not going to get irate about it. It's not going to wind me up anymore. Do
you know what? I said this before, but my background is in learning and development, and there are 4 stages of learning. I don't know what I don't know. I know what I don't know. I know what I know. And I don't know what I know. Right? The last one being reflexes. First one, you can't learn if you don't know what you don't know. Now we know what we don't know. We can try and learn a little bit more about it, and then we can move up on our learning journey and see where we get from there. But there it is, folks. Check out Steve's detail down below if you want to get stuck into that. Really worthwhile listen as well. Steve, again, massive thanks for taking time and speaking to us. And I hope you found that enjoyable. Steve, appreciate you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, man.